Good afternoon. It is Monday, September the 24th at 12 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. This is Weatherflow meteorologist Shay Gibson bringing you a tropics update as we continue to monitor 3 areas of disturbance across the tropical Atlantic basin. We do have Invest 98L, which may be affecting portions of the southeast coast over the next couple of days, and we'll get into a little bit more detail about this. This is going to be heading to the west and ultimately towards the outskirts of North Carolina by Wednesday, so we're watching this one very closely. This is most immediate to the United States, and I'll get back to this last because I want to cover the other 2 systems quickly and focus more energy on this towards the latter half of this video. We also have remnants of what was Tropical Storm Kirk down here along the main development region heading to the west at 23 miles per hour. We have Subtropical Storm Leslie moving barely to the east at about 5 miles per hour, and we'll talk about these as well. So taking a quick look at our TC climatology, and we did reach the peak of the season right about or on or near September the 10th, and we're on the downswing now, but we don't need to let our guards down just yet because we still are on the high shoulder of this active period. Even though it's on the downswing, we're going to continue to see tropical waves popping up, and we're going to have to watch them with great interest. Even when we get into October, when we get towards the middle of October, we definitely see another spike. Historically, we see another spike in activity, so we need to be watching out for this as well. And then we don't really start to see the activity wind down until we get into late October and all the way into November, which the season ends November the 30th, which is way down here. So we still have a long ways to go, several weeks before we get down to this base period at the very end of the hurricane season. So we need to be watching everything with great interest and not letting our guards down for anything at all. Going back to Kirk, this was downgraded to tropical depression early this morning and then downgraded to just remnants as of 11 o'clock a.m. It looks like its closed circulation either dissipated or is non-existent, and so it's also racing to the west at 23 miles per hour. Here's the visible satellite on this, and we see a lot of upper shear on the system as well. The cloud tops are being blown off from south to north across the system, and so this is limiting or not allowing vertical stacking to occur, and so the convection is not able to aggregate around the core. The other fact is that this system is moving very, very quickly, in this direction, very, very quickly at 23 miles per hour. A lot of times these systems don't have enough time to wrap convection around the core because they're moving so quickly. If this were going slower at 15 miles per hour or below, it may have a chance, but just the sheer rapidness of its movement is limiting its actual strengthening process. So it's been downgraded to remnants. Now, if it does regenerate a closed circulation at the surface and gather its basic aggregate around the core, then we could get Tropical Storm Kirk once again, or TD again, which would carry the same name. We also have a lot of dry air wrapping down and around into the core as well, and this is from the Saharan air layer aloft. If we look at the water vapor loop, we can see the reds and the yellows signify dry air aloft at the higher altitudes. Even at the mid-level and the surface level, that dry air is really getting into it. And then again, you can really see the explosion of convection, but all of the upper shear pushing the cloud tops to the north of the system right now. It just doesn't have any kind of low-level closed circulation that's well defined for the system, which is why it was downgraded. Now, taking a look at the Saharan air layer, and you can see where Kirk is right now. Basically right in this area, all of this dry, dusty air aloft that's suspended at the mid-levels and precipitates down to the surface levels is wrapped all around it. So it's also fighting that off, and we can expect that to continue as this plume of dry air continues to the west along with it and maintains its presence throughout its life cycle. So it's a very much a dry air wrapped and upper shear affected system, and so that's why it was downgraded this morning. It may not make it back to tropical storm status, but either way, I do think that the Lesser Antilles and the Windward Islands should be watching this system from afar, just in case it tries to make a run at regenerating closer to the islands. It may have one small window of opportunity over here, but it's unfavorable this time. The upper shear looks to stay on along that dry air, so we may get another break for those islands yet. We just had Isaac, and we also had another system go through just recently, another TD that dissipated as well. So they've gotten lucky. 3 waves in a row have gone past with the name that have not made it there, and so we continue to watch. All right, next is Subtropical Storm Leslie up here to the north. This is more of a cool core system, and winds are at 40 miles per hour. Movement to the east at 5 miles per hour. We continue to see this trend with a little bit of a east-northeast turn by 8 a.m. Wednesday. This aims it sort of towards the Azores Islands at this point. It's too far out to tell if it's going to make it over here, but these islands should be monitoring this system just in case. Even if it goes extratropical, these storms can still pack a punch even with a cooler core over these areas with strong winds and driving waves. And so we'll continue to watch there. Here is the visible satellite for Leslie, and you can see not a lot of convection wrapped into it, but you can see the overall rotation of the entire system makes it subtropical in general, because it does have some tropical characteristics, but the core is cooler as it pulls cooler air down from the north. You can see this air coming down from the north. This is more or less mid-level to surface level, cooler air being pulled into the system, into the core, and this makes it subtropical by nature. There is another area of disturbance to its north. Let me go back to the home page, and if we look at the 5-day graphical outlook, we have another little blip up here given a 50% chance next 5 days. This is a non-tropical low pressure system, is expected to form to its north and then be ingested by Leslie. So as the storm moves to the east, it could go over some warmer sea surface temperatures and ingest this area of disturbance, and it could be tropical by the time this happens. It may take on warmer core characteristics, and then we could see Leslie be changed to a tropical storm Leslie. So we'll be watching this very closely as well. A very interesting area at this latitude for this kind of setup to be occurring, but either way it's definitely interesting, and we have to keep an eye on it from afar. Okay, so that's Leslie. Let's go ahead and let's talk about Invest 98L. Now, it does have a, like I said earlier, 30% chance in the next 48 hours. The environmental conditions where it is right now, in this period from today and at least through tomorrow morning, maybe tomorrow afternoon, it's got a favorable environment for conditions. It's a little further south from where Florence was before, so it does have some warmer sea surface temperatures that it's over right now, and it's also in a period of like relaxed upper shear, so we're not seeing quite as much. If we look at visible satellite on this, we can see the low-level circulation is a little bit to the south here. It's kind of hard to see where it is, but it's somewhere in this vicinity, right about here. A lot of this convection is off to its north. Now, this little vorticity maximum down here may dissipate altogether, and we may get another area of vorticity up into the core of where this convection is occurring, because sometimes this convection can aggregate and basically rezone the primary low within the system. But the bottom line is it's trying to get its act together in a more favorable environment at this point. It has a very small window to do this, and we can see this upper shear going in this direction. That should be relaxing a little bit, so it has a small window as it heads up in this general direction. Now it will turn north in time due to a cold front approach from the west, and we also have to keep in mind that if it does come near the coast and present rain, all of these areas that have encountered flooding from the Florence rains and the river swelling definitely don't need any amount of rain right now, but a cold front may be dropping that rain either way. So it makes for a very sort of a little bit of a stressful sort of situation with this storm. We don't want it to come into the coastline, and we're not exactly sure if it will. We do look at the Euro model. This is from midnight last night. I can run the deterministic run because it's pretty close out within a couple of days, so it's okay, but I can also show you the GFS. Basically, there isn't a real well-known center of circulation, so the Euro basically ensembles aren't picking up on this very well. So we can run the deterministic models even for the GFS ensemble, which has populated, and we can look at what's going on here, and it looks like it's going to weaken because it's heading into drier air, and it's going to have upper shear increasing on it as it heads basically to the northwest in time. Now by the time it makes it near the coastline, it looks like it's weakened into basically a tropical wave, or maybe just a surface low at this point. I doubt it would even be a depression, but it could be. And we're looking at this upper low moving across the Great Lakes. That's going to draw a trough across the Ohio Valley, and that's going to push to the east and eventually grab this storm and pull it out to sea. So that's what we are fairly confident on at this point of happening. If we run this GFS model, let me see if I can get the GFS on this, and you'll see something very similar here. If we run this forward, we see this basically dissipating just like the Euro showed it, maybe a little bit further to the south and getting caught up along this cold front. And the primary driver here is, again, even with Florence, we had this ridge to the north which is driving these clockwise surface winds, and so this is the steering feature for this right now. And if we go forward in time, we see that the ridge builds a little further to the north, and we see this clockwise rotation pushing this further into the coast and then up and around it. We go out to, that's at 12 hours, and if we go out a little further than that, we can see that ridge building over the northeast United States, eventually dropping to the southeast just a hair, enough to ride this up along the ridge and pinch it in between our next cold front, which is here, and the ridge, which is pushing it up from the clockwise directions in this area. It's going to get pinched in between, sheared off, and then pulled out to sea. So that's the good news, is that it does not look like it's going to be sticking around. If we look at GFS ensemble tracks, now this is as of 6 o'clock a.m. Let me see if I can rerun this and get current storm. The 12 o'clock may be up, so I'm going to go ahead and run this. And it looks like the GFS tracks, now this is still saying the 6 a.m. So the 12 o'clock p.m. is not ready yet. It has not loaded. But this is the basic on the ensembles, where all the members are bringing this little uncomfortably close into the coastline here, which could drop some rain. And then in time it does sweep it out to sea, but not before dropping some rainfalls over these areas. So let's go ahead and take a look at, go back to the eastern side. And we can see what's going to happen here with vorticity and wind. We go to 6 hours, we go out to, here's the area right here that we're talking about. And we've got to keep a little eye, because this is a weak little wave at the mid-levels, and it's going to be going around a mid-level ridge that develops just over here at Bermuda, which is going to be pushing it up into the coastline here. And we go forward in time, and we see this making it to the coast. But what we also, here it is right here, we also see that the upper level winds are going to be increasing ahead of this upper low, and the jet stream is going to be increasing as well. So this upper shear from southwest to northeast is going to be coming across the system just as it makes it near the coastline and tearing those cloud tops off. So I do think that this air will be, this upper air stream will be tearing the cloud tops off and keeping the rain limited on the western side of the system based on the criteria that we're seeing right here. Now that doesn't mean the cold front won't be driving rain along the prefrontal build. In fact, if we look at the WPC here map, if we go into time, we can see the prefrontal build starting to show some rains along a warm front, basically a stalled front over the southeast region, which could already be bringing some rains to those areas. And as we go into time, we go into Tuesday. This is Monday night, and we go into Tuesday morning, and we see the high pressure built into the southeast. Here comes the low into the coast right here along this tail end of a front. And then we see the cold front developing out here to the west, and that's going to race towards the coast and pull this out. So here it comes. But in the meantime, this is looking like Wednesday morning. All of this prefrontal build ahead of the cold front plus the tropical moisture possibly pulling up could drop a little bit of rain over the far eastern half of North Carolina. And this is why the WPC quantitative precipitation forecast is keeping the rainfalls rather low for this area. It does know that it's going to come pretty close, so it's going to keep a modest amount of rain, maybe near an inch or so, along the outer coastline here. And hopefully we'll keep it away from the inner zones of eastern or southeastern North Carolina. So it looks like maybe a trace to 1/4 of an inch for these folks, maybe a little bit higher, 1/2 inch up to an inch along the outer coastline is what they're calling for on day 2, which is Wednesday. So we'll continue to monitor that as well. Just be tuning in to see what the rainfall amounts are going to be changing to for your area, because this will change, and we'll see what happens from there. I think that's pretty much going to cover it for the tropics this round, but just know that Invest 98L, if you can see the track here, does keep it, the outside here, the margin of error keeps it on the outskirts. And if we do, we can go back and look at current storms, go back to 98L, and this is just based on where its current low-level circulation is at this point. Deterministic runs here, these are the model tracks for GFS and other models as well. A majority of them are keeping this off the coast, which is good. So we saw the GFS ensemble, and then we're seeing the main spaghetti plots out ahead of the system. A majority of them recurving out to sea. Now, once over this area, could it become a named storm? Sure, that's why it's given a 40% chance next 5 days, but it doesn't look like it's going to be having high impacts on the eastern side of North Carolina. So I want to stress that it's nothing to be overly concerned about. It looks like it could just drop a little bit of rain ahead of a cold front with that prefrontal build. You may get a little rain pinched in there in between along the outskirts, maybe the Outer Banks down through Cedar Island and even down to Cape Lookout. As far as Wilmington goes, you're looking at even less rain. So I think a majority of the rain is going to stay basically to the north and to the east of the system as it heads up to the north. And that's going to do it for this tropical update. And until next time, everyone take care, and thank you for watching.